Right, straight back into part two then. The old mucker's made me a nice cup of tea. Well, cup of tea.
It's got a bit of mud in it, sorry. It's everywhere.
The cup was moving. Right, do you fish for anything else, mate? Is it just carp only, or do you dabble in other species?
90% of it is carp fishing, just purely down to time restraints, but I spent a bit of time on the beach with my mate Mark Cole, one of my best mates. He's a brilliant sea angler. He's actually a brilliant all-round angler, and I should have mentioned him earlier in terms of influence and things that I've gleaned. I mean, Mark Cole's probably the best angler I've ever fished with, again apart from myself. Yeah, so a bit of sea fishing. I get terribly seasick, but I've done a bit of smooth hound fishing out on the boat when
Is that the Thames estuary, is it, or?
That's what would that be? The do you know what, I should know. One of the Essex tributaries, not the Thames. But anyway, yeah, off the Essex coast for smooth hounds. But yeah, I mean, barbel really light my fire. I know.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, if there was no such thing as a carp, I'd be a barbel angler without a doubt. Had him up to 12.2 off the Bristol Avon under the guidance of Martin Bowler, and I used to stalk them out the Windrush. I mean, unfortunately they're all gone now because of the otters, but used to stalk them with just a couple of split shot on the line and a bit of sweet corn and sight fish for them.
Fantastic.
Which was amazing.
Proper fishing.
Yeah, absolutely. Tench, I love tench. So yeah, I mean, I'm really open to fishing for other species. I'm going chub fishing with Dean Macy on the Kennet in the next few weeks.
Excellent.
So yeah, I just love my fishing.
Give my regards to Dean.
I will.
I don't know him. I don't. Back to the carp scene. Do you tend to target individual fish? Do you set out your sights at the beginning of a season, or seasons were, right, that's the fish I'm going to target this year? Or I know you spent a lot of time on Raisbury the last couple of seasons. Has that purely been after an individual fish, or?
My own personal carp fishing is entirely about targeting individual fish, and has been for, I don't know, 10 or 15 years now, certainly more than 10 years. Again, it's kind of, my fishing through the industry has meant that I've been doing a lot of fishing on places where I've needed to get a bite for an article or something, but that a lot of people probably perceive that as my fishing, because my own fishing I tend to keep sort of private and under the radar, but my own fishing is solely about fishing low stocked waters for individual fish. At Raisbury, I mean, I've been chasing, actually, to be fair, at Raisbury, any of them is a result.
Yeah.
But I'm acquainted with some of the individuals up there, and I would say, yeah, I mean, all of my most memorable carp fishing has been where I've been up close and personal with individual characters that I've been trying to catch, and trying to put that jigsaw together, working out where they go, who they're with, watching their feeding habits, and just studying them, trying to find the chink in the armour that will allow you to sort of find the final piece of that jigsaw and allow you to catch it. But that's the sort of carp fishing that I love most, yeah, singling out big, well, not necessarily big, but individual fish.
Have you had much success at Raisbury?
I think I was going to say no, but then in terms of the time I've put in, I probably have. Yeah, I've probably averaged a fish every sort of 10 or 15 nights over the 6 years that I've had about 8 bites. Yeah, it's hard going, but at one stage I felt really in tune with it. But you need to be there, you need to keep going, and try and string something together. And it's obviously very, very hard going for a lot of different reasons, but an amazing lake, and when you do get that bite,
it's a result.
It's spine tingling, So hope to do more up there in the coming years. I'll probably never stop fishing Raisbury, because I've never got the time or the ability to sort of catch them all. So I'll always be 1 or 2 steps behind on there, and thus it's the only lake that I've ever felt unable to crack. I think everywhere I've fished, other than that, after a period of time, I've managed to put it together and catch them. But Raisbury, I don't know, it's just continually kicks you in the knackers, and And as
Keeps you on your
such, I
toes.
think I'll still be there when I'm an old man, hopefully. So, which
What do you
won't be
mean
too
when?
far
What do you
away.
mean when? Here's an adult question for you, mate. Have you ever burnt a bridge that wish you could repair?
I don't think I have. I try to go through life not burning bridges. I'm trying to think. No, I don't think I have. Whether it's been an ex or a work-related thing, I think most people or everyone that I've passed throughout life's journey, I would like to think they'd say hello if they passed me again today. So, no.
Good answer. Right answer.
Thank you.
Is it particles or boilies? Can I use one?
If I could only use one, tiger nuts, one bait. If it was, forever. Closely followed by a boilie, but there's just something about a good, well-prepared tiger nut that is fairly impervious to the attentions of other species. That big carp love, or all carp love. That you can use in a variety of different ways and situations, and is still quite underused.
Yeah.
It's a fine line between that and a boilie, because I'm a massive boilie user. I don't use massive boilies, but yeah, I'm a huge user of boilies and love them. But yeah, tiger nuts probably would be that, or floaters.
Yeah.
Good old chum mixer, or some Hinders floaters, something like that. Again, I've given you a multiple answer. Sorry.
If you could use one, you was limited to one rig to use for a whole season. So that's just your summer, winter, and autumn. What rig would you use, and why?
Good one, that, mate. I was initially going to say the stiff hinge rig, because it suits my style of big carp fishing and boilie fishing down to the ground. But then again, if I was limited to just that, and I was on a lake where maybe I was trying to catch doubles, which I often end up doing, then I would be handicapped by that, because it is specifically suited to big fish, and when you try and apply that to venues with smaller fish, it just isn't as effective. So I don't know, probably, very possibly, the rig that I'm using now, that I've used with a lot of success this year, which is the chod rig with a bottom bait, which I've refined a little bit. I know you've got to fish it on a clear bottom, whereas with a stiff hinge and a chod rig, you've got more, there's more different types of bottom you can present over. But yeah, I think if I had to use the rig I'm using now, which is the chod rig with a bottom bait, for the next year, I'd be quite happy.
You said you've had a lot of success on that this season, and especially with latter months.
Yeah, it's been phenomenal. I've had bites from a wide variety of different lakes. From one place I remember was quite interesting, was a day ticket lake, Par Fisheries at Brentwood, and I was only doing a day trip. I was testing a couple of things, and got there in the morning, and there were fish over my baited area, and I wasn't getting any bites, and I started thinking something's not right. I need to try and sort of elicit a bite from this situation, and I remembered that I had previously, when I'd been fishing, I'd accidentally caught a fish on a chod rig with a bottom bait, where in my haste, I tied on the wrong bait, caught a fish, and then I put the rig in the edge and it's fallen over, and I thought, I couldn't believe it. So that stayed in my mind, and then I applied it on this particular trip when I wasn't getting any bites, and I thought, I'm going to put the chod rig put a bottom bait on it, cast it out, and then through the course of that day, this was April this year, I think, I had 15 fish between 8 AM and 6 PM, including the biggest fish in the lake, just under 28 pounds. 2 fish on at once, a couple of times, on a lake where, it's not a runs water, but it's not easy, and there, on that particular day, there was nothing else caught around the lake. And I don't say that to blow my own trumpet, but that showed me that I had stumbled on something that really, really worked well.
So by accident then, really?
By accident, and since applied it to a couple of very tough venues, one of which is non-publicity, so I can't name, but 2 bites in a night on it there, and Manor Farm Fisheries in Biggleswade recently been filming and had a big hit of fish on it, and then culminating with the 2 fish recently, the 37 and the 47. So yeah, very confident in
Nice
that now.
Perhaps we'll get that rig on film later.
No, I don't think so. I'm not going to discuss it anymore.
What's your favourite food, mate?
It would have to be, well, as I call it, my death row dinner. If it was my last dinner, it would be a roast dinner. Definitely be a roast dinner with probably roast lamb with mint sauce, garlic, rosemary and sea salt, crispy roast potatoes, steamed veg, lots of thick gravy, a couple of Yorkshires, a plate of that, and then another plate of that next to it, ready to go on to when I finish the first one.
So all that in preference to Woody's Kicking Chicken.
Oh,
I'm
mate,
gutted. I am gutted.
Woody's Kicking Chicken is probably what I would have for dessert. You know, and I had that.
No, forget it, mate. You've said it now. You've said it.
You hadn't let me finish. We hadn't moved on, so you don't know that I wasn't going to say that. Your kicking chicken is amazing, mate, and I sincerely hope next time we fish together we can order a takeaway.
Best country you've ever visited?
It's not a country, but Hong Kong is one of the most amazing places I've ever been to. Just for its vibrancy, its flavour and smell, and the look and feel of the place is quite remarkable. So yeah, I love Hong Kong. And again, not a country, but a place. I had some great times in Ibiza. It's fantastic.
We won't go into detail.
In terms of other, I'm fortunate that I've travelled to a lot of different places. From the wildernesses of Canada, which was astonishing, but wouldn't go back purely because the mosquitoes were so bad.
That was carp fishing on the...
Yeah, in Quebec.
That's right, I
on the
remember
St.
that.
Lawrence, which was, we couldn't even go out in daylight without getting hammered by mosquitoes.
I remember
It
you
was
saying you'd had
awful.
like 2,500 bites, but
Yeah.
and had a fish.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was horrible. So yeah, a few different places. China was amazing, but only as an experience, not somewhere that I would go on holiday. But yeah.
Nice one. From Drennan, you moved across to Fox.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about that.
Well, I got headhunted from Drennan to Fox, and it wasn't a move that I really wanted to make because I was very happy, as I said earlier, at Drennan. Great collection of people, and I had a good relationship with Peter and with Terry. But the headhunt offer from Fox was one that would have enabled me to sort of change my life in terms of getting on a property ladder, and as such it was one that when I thought about it, I thought it was an offer that I couldn't refuse. Enabled me to get my first house. So I moved to Fox, spent probably 2 years there, and then eventually I got headhunted again. But
There's a lot of people after your head, mate.
There were then. Not so much now, but yeah.
Tell us, what's your worst angling experience? That can be anything.
Probably it would be a sea fishing experience actually, where I'd been out with Mark. We'd been sea fishing on
Mark
this
Cole.
boat, Mark Cole, and it was a really rough day. We were down in Cornwall. We'd gone down there for his birthday, and he was obsessed with sea fishing. And I said I didn't want to go out because I knew I was going to be ill, and he said you'll be all right. And I took all these pills, and I said I still didn't want to go. And then that morning he opened the curtains of our B&B and looked out across the harbour, and he said, look, it's flat calm, blue sky like today. He said it'll be all right. So he cajoled me into going, and I agreed. Went out on the boat, and we went out the harbour, and then we kept on going, and we kept on going, and we kept on going, and we kept on going until it looked like we was going to go off the edge of the world into another dimension. And this place that the captain took us to was a maelstrom of hurt, and it was just massive waves and pouring rain, freezing cold. We didn't have the right clothes, and I started throwing up, and I didn't stop throwing up all day. I didn't fish, and I was just curled up under one of the seats. I was sick 11 times that day, I remember. The last one was my esophagus and the lining of my stomach, I think, that came up. And
Is he still a mate?
he is, yeah, and he still goes out, but he still tries to get me to go with him, but I wouldn't. But that, you know, surrounded by a load of hardened Captain Birdseye type characters that, you know, I pleaded with Captain to take me back to port,
They
but he
don't
said,
do
look,
it, mate.
everyone's paid their money, mate,
Yeah.
you've got to wait out there. And it was the longest 6 hours of my life, vomit soaked, just awful, truly awful.
That's enough for that one. Are you sponsored?
No, I'm not. I'm sponsored by Mainline. I've been with them for bait for a long time, but no, in terms of that's the only one.
Okay. Something which probably would have never thought would happen a few years ago, but of late we've seen more and more anglers, not just in the carp world but in the match game as well, turning professional. What are your thoughts on that?
You mean making a living solely
Yeah,
out
yeah.
of fishing? Yeah, I mean, if you go back, I mean, in my opinion, there's only one angler who's well, Jim Shelley's doing it right now, but there's only one guy who's really coined it in and
Terry.
had a good lifestyle from carp fishing, and that's Terry. And you know, a lot of people dream and have aspirations of making a living out of carp fishing, but the reality is that you either end up working for someone and doing endless hours on a modest salary, or you get a consultancy and you live on the bank and don't have a particularly great life and
Yeah.
have an album full of pictures and nothing else, you know. So the only guys that make a lot of money out of carp fishing really are the guys who own their own companies.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it is something that's been a big change, certainly in the last decade, and there are people who are getting by on it, but you know, I would say that
Just
probably a
getting
lot
by.
of them are scraping by,
Yeah.
but they're doing something they love. So
Yeah.
you know, scrape by doing something you love rather than earn a load of money in an office
Getting
and
that
hate your job
balance.
is, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. If you could change anything in your life, not necessarily just related to fishing, is there anything you'd change?
Yeah, I'm a bit of an insomniac. If I'm not in my own bed, I struggle to sleep, and it's something that I've started to cope with better in recent years. But when I'm fishing, in the past, it's really taken its toll, and usually a two-nighter will be as much as I could possibly do, and I'm ready to go home. My fishing is impaired as a result, so even one night wears me out. But I'm starting to just sort of get to the stage where I know it's not the end of the world if I've had a couple of days with no sleep, and I'm not as grumpy as I used to be.
Thank God for that.
But yeah, I would love to be someone like yourself or Chili or quite a few guys that I know that get on the bed chair, pull up the sleeping bag, and they just go out until the bite alarm goes off. And if I could be like that, then I would look a lot younger than I do. I'd have less grey hair.
You're looking all right, mate.
Cheers.
What rods and reels do you use?
I've used Daiwa rods for about the last 6 or 7 years. Not only the last 6 or 7 years, my first ever carp rods were Daiwas. And my first ever fishing reel was a Daiwa. So I've used their gear sort of throughout my fishing life, really.
And that's totally non-sponsored?
Yeah, non-sponsored. I've got some Infinities, which I think are an amazing fishing rod for distance, accuracy, feel, the whole package. So I love my Infinities. I've got some 3 1/4s, and I twin though. Well, I'm a bit of a reel collector, so I've got all kinds of reels. But the ones I use, the 2 sets that I use for most of my fishing, I've got some black Baziers that are fitted with wooden
It's Daiwa
handles,
again.
which are Daiwa.
Yeah.
Which I use for the majority of my fishing, and then for Raisbury I've got a set of Daiwa 6000 tournament tees, which I have on my cork handled Infinities, which you know, they're like the rods and reels that I take on my sort of special fishing. So yeah, Daiwa through and through.
Nice one. Last question in this session, because I'm busting for a leak. Carp match fishing, is that anything you've ever got involved in?
Yes, it is, and I did the BCAC I think 2 years running. Might be wrong. Certainly 1 year. I'm pretty sure we did it 2 years. Did it with Tom Dove. We formed a great partnership doing that, and we had a good time doing it. Yeah, we did do it 2 years running, because I remember the different. We got to the final 1 year, fished at Broadlands, but
The Hampshire Broadlands.
yeah. The problem with it, in my opinion, was that You've got people like Ian Huntingdon and Pete Holthouse who are far out and beyond everybody else. Most people who are fishing in those competitions would say that Pete and Ian are the best pair consistently, and they've done it for probably 10 years and they've never won it. And you have to sacrifice such an enormous amount of time and preparation to do it that your own fishing suffers enormously. And I realised that when you get to the final, everybody who's there in the final is capable of winning it, you know, because they've come through the eliminating stages and so on. So any pair can win it, and then usually the fish are in one area. So it really is down to the draw. Whoever draws it will go in there and win it. And when I thought, you know, if me and Tom had won it the year we had done it, I wouldn't have personally felt it was a great achievement, because I would have looked at all the other great anglers and I thought, well, if they had got that number, they would have won it. So it would have taken something away from me if I had have won it. And I just thought it was a great experience, but my own fishing mattered more to me. So,
something you wouldn't go back to, or
I'd never say never, because it was a buzz, it was exciting, and enjoyed it, and me and Tom fished well as a pair. But it would take a lot for me to go back into it.
Mate, let's call it a day there for a second.
Another
Before we
cuppa?
start, another cuppa.
All right,
I'm going to have a leak, and then we'll be back for part 3.
Cool.